Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Day 12 Talking Horses, presented by Saratoga Water. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling. One of us apparently named after a dinosaur.
You didn't know that fun fact? I'm shocked, but
I
yes,
don't-
I had to
if you didn't
share
know,
that with you this
Sarah's,
morning.
Sarah's apparently named after a dinosaur.
Land Before Time,
Yeah.
the mean one.
Tell you
It all
something.
fits.
You learn something new at the racetrack every day. We got a lot to talk about with 11 races, so we're going to head right into the NYRA Bets portion of the show. Head on over if you're not a member. Use the promo code SPA200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. Play through NYRA Bets. Keep the money in the game. We have a middle pick four. I'm guessing, where was it today? It's probably 2, 5, and 8. Because we have 3 pick 5s, because we have a middle pick 5 in race number 4. But apparently the middle pick 5, which is a mandatory payout, by the way, no carryover in that one because we don't always run them on consecutive days. Apparently that is not worthy of a slate.
No.
I don't know what makes you worthy of a slate. It's just sort of
Neither of
what
us,
makes you
clearly.
slate worthy. Well, that's a given, Sarah. What else do we have here? We have Saturday contest. You have till 5 o'clock today. Hope you participate in the preliminary one yesterday for $40, but if not, $300 buy until 5 o'clock today. Head over to NYRA.com/contest for more information and registration. You have until 5. So you got 5 hours and 16 minutes right now. We have, I like this, a Taste of New York Pavilion. It's located near Gate A, the Berkshire Bank Family Zone. I don't know if they're giving out cash, but if they are, I could use some. Every Thursday to Sunday, you've got to be 21 or over, of course, to sample or purchase alcohol, but a lot of fun. I know a lot of people go over that, and a really cool thing here at Saratoga. Always so many great things happening here in Saratoga. We also have, last but not least, I have a song in my head, you know, when you're listening to this. I was listening to Desolation Row by Bob Dylan before I came here, and it's got great lyrics, and they were all in my head. So we also have 1 to 7 on FS2. Today's show, 11 race card. Race number 1. So why don't we start with those that ran, and that would basically be the 7 Mischief Joke and the 8 Split Strike. And my thinking, I try to land on horses that have run if possible, as opposed to guessing with firsters. Not, just in general. Though how Mike Dubbs' horse paid $8 in yesterday's first race. How'd that horse not pay $5? But anyway, I prefer a horse like Split Strike, who did the dirty work in here and was dueling with Works for M, who was coming up that huge Works for Me, coming up that huge race down at Churchill. That was a very, very productive race. And I'm a little sick of Mischief Joke, who's kind of had his chances and sort of pick up the pieces last time. So I'm going to hope Split Strike of those two turns the tables. Now, whether or not, and you obviously agree from those that ran, the question obviously involves the firster. Agalos the Great?
I believe it is Agalos.
Who is Agalos?
Well, we believe that Agalos is a game that looks actually pretty fun. It's kind of like an old school N64 type of game that just came out recently.
What is N64?
Nintendo 64.
Remember, you're talking to an old man
to
here,
you.
an old decrepit soul. The last time I played
video
Nintendo, I
game?
think I was playing Pong. Okay, so that's a takeoff of that?
As far as we know, because we
Okay.
found the game and we found someone talking about the game. So if it's for something else, I'm not aware of it, but I'm going to go with that since it looks kind of fun. And this horse seems like could be okay. We know how hot the George Weaver barn has been of late, and I know that you have the workout for this one as well.
We do have the workout for this one, Sarah. Thank you. That's a great segue. Why don't we show the workout? It was 21 and a fifth. I didn't think it was a spectacular workout. This was a dam who was a real runner for Todd Pletcher, running by her figures in the 90s. She's had 3 foals that didn't do much running, 2 that were pretty good. Didn't sell for that much money after this work, which isn't that surprising with that pedigree, but I think you just have to be scared of George Weaver. Now, George Weaver has had all his success with the 2-year-olds this year on the turf, and I don't mean to say all in a negative way. He's had giant success with them, but I don't feel like he won a dirt race with a 2-year-old this year. It's not in my
One
head. I
doesn't
don't
come to
feel
mind
it. Yeah.
immediately, so it's possible, but I don't have one off the top of my head. I wasn't wowed by this work
Right.
either, looking at it from a visual perspective, but it seemed like it was a very efficiently moving kind of horse, and to get a time like that, 21 and a quarter, for that quarter of a mile, I just felt as though this was one that seemed to be mature, handling things well, and I wasn't totally taken by the horses that had some experience, mainly Mischief Joke either, who has no speed whatsoever, and while this horse does come running late, it's just not enough.
Just chances now. The fourth chance, you kind of want to move from them and at least split strikes only run the one time. Flash speed in that
Right.
race, ran a credible race in this horse, a firster. And it's tough to get overly excited by the firsters here. You have the Tom Morley horse, Easy Roll, in there. I have Eric from Miami, and it just seems like Horacio De Paz is a guy that can be live at any price. His horse ran very well in the maiden
Focus,
race yesterday.
Focus.
I think ran second at a big price, got caught by Brad Cox. That was the race where the Jeremiah Englehart just blew the brake. Probably was the best horse in there.
Yeah, that was a decent effort. He hasn't had a ton of wins with his 2-year-old first-time starters, but they do tend to run well.
Yeah. No, I am a big Horacio De Paz fan. Race number 2 is the first of the usual couple of scratches on top choices of mine, and it lost a lot of the flavor for me because I really wanted to bet Surprise Boston here, but he's a vet scratch, so I guess it's probably good. It does change the pace. The pace scenario's changed a little with Artemis City Limits coming out, and also with him coming out. If you liked him, so be it. But I think both of us were trying to beat him. And to me, it's just going to take an enormous amount of potential value of the race because to me, Artemis City Limits looked like a horse that just kind of lost his best game.
Absolutely. The 3 starts that he's run so far this year were pretty much nothing efforts, and he was a horse that was likely to take a lot of money. So with him exiting this race and not being a part of it, you do get a shorter price on pretty much everybody else. But his races that we've seen in his 3 starts this year have been absolutely awful.
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 Right. And something I know you guys want to show the replay, but if you give us 1 second here, and I think it's an important point with horses. Turf races, figures in turf races are very different than dirt figures, because a lot of times the figures in turf races are very reflective of the fields the horse ran in. Because of the way turf races are run, where essentially they gallop around the track and they run the last quarter of a mile. One of the reasons trainers love turf horses is they'll run horses that would lose by 10 on the dirt and they lose by 3 on the turf because of the nature, the way it's run. So what happens is those horses run better figures because they're in better fields. And you have to be very careful, I think, in turf races. You have to judge how much they ran. Drop downs are drop downs. Regardless, I guess Fauci's going to end up as one of the choice in here. And we'll show his race 2 back behind Thin White Duke and Dancing Buck. And clearly, at this time in his career, he was good. There is less pace now with the scratch, which doesn't help him. And the other thing about him is he just doesn't win.
No, he does not win. This is a horse that I really liked going way back to the Manila a couple years ago, and he ended up finishing second that day. And he just has the propensity to do that. And while he's very talented and does seem to show up with that closing kick, as you can see here, he's the number 7 on the outside, switching leads in the later stages back to his inside lead and just not getting past those top 2, Thin White Duke and Dancing Boss. He just doesn't have that oomph to actually get there, and he's now going to be quite a bit of a shorter price as well.
Yeah, I didn't give them a 4th pick. I forgot the 5 scratch. Well, I completely agree. We've got him second. I scratch into him for second. I don't know if you scratched him for second as well. And another one is King Angelo, who was a better dirt horse, and his dirt races are okay, but he's kind of losing his form a little bit as well. He would be my 4th choice in here for what it's worth.
The only thing with him that had me include him, and even though he's going to be a shorter price, is
well, you have him 4th, so it's not like you're sorry, but
well, he's in there. He's thrown in
the 6-horse field. Go ahead. Sorry.
There were other horses in here before, okay? But I think that he has a little bit more turf speed than he does dirt speed. Not by much, but he is going to be drawing closer to the inside. He does have that race. If we go back to last year, he ran that 91 Buyer, Jose Ortiz aboard on the turf.
But he got loose that day, and how's he outrunning fluid situation?
I don't believe he is.
Right.
That's why he's further down.
So what's your take on Comedy Town?
He was one that I really had questioned if he could run at all anymore, and I think that's still a very fair question to ask now. But I can make an excuse enough for his last race where he and Super Success really canceled each other out, going quick early in that race, and the pace with the 2 of them completely fell apart. In the race before that, perhaps he needed that start off the layoff, but it is a concern that he has run well fresh in the past. Unfortunately, maybe he's getting a little bit older. He needs to race into fitness a bit more, and I wanted a horse that was going to sit in more of that stalking and pouncing type of position, still being up close. Now there's less speed in this race, and I feel as though perhaps he could get that kind of trip if he does have any ability left.
Okay. Listen, I mean, but he didn't beat Super Success that day, which would bother me. And Super Success was sort of under the gun. And Super Success, I didn't show it. I probably should have shown it. If I knew there were going to be scratches in here, I would have. He was really in traffic last time out and just never really had a fair chance to run in that race. And so I thought he was very dangerous off a bit of a trouble trip. And while he was my original 2nd choice, I'll scratch into him. And I don't mind that. I don't know what price he'll be. It's so hard to know how races get bet around here.
Of course. I just didn't love that he had only had one win on the turf so far.
Okay.
But he certainly has some ability and some tactical speed as well.
I think you could argue that his form has really improved for Fernando Abreu. His horse has been running very well. I liked his horse in the last race yesterday. I think there's a big argument to make that horse would have won if he didn't fall on his head at the start of the race.
Famous Kent.
Yeah, I've had like 4 horses fall on
had
their
some
faces.
unlucky
this start.
times.
Yes. Well, luck like that doesn't tend to last forever. We'll see what happens in race number 2. Race number 3. Race number 3 changed significantly with scratches because now both halves of the entry are in. And while, I don't know what the story is going to be with looking for bargains for Chad Brown, it's still another Chad Brown horse getting in, and it's 2 for the price of 1. And I didn't really want to take these horses, but I didn't really want to take anybody else. So I have to admit, I just sort of copped out with the favorites. St. Benedict's Prep didn't do a lot of running in that one turf race, but it was a slow pace, and there are a lot better horses than this. And I just couldn't make a strong case for anybody else, but you obviously have a different idea.
I went to a horse that I felt as though was compromised by the way that the race flowed last time out in her first start getting onto the turf. And I just felt as though she really improved getting over to the grass in Katie's Check Ride. She was forwardly placed in a race where the pace did fall apart in the later stages of that race. And I think that perhaps getting a little bit more of a favorable dynamic today, plus she's going to be a price and gets the rider upgrade to Luis Saez, could work in her favor a little bit more in here. But I don't disagree with you that both halves of the Chad Brown entry are certainly extremely live and likely to win.
Yeah, I saw it differently with Katie's Check Ride. I thought she got a very good trip in that race and just had nothing, and she was 50-1. I do like the rider change, though. I think it's a good rider change. We'll see. Will be a bit of a price in there. I thought Catskill Humor was a bit interesting if I was going to find a stranger. The Dam was actually a turf horse that Chad Brown had, and she hasn't produced any turf runners. 2 tried it. They both stunk. I don't want to completely give up on this horse, so I thought I'd throw this one in. I want to talk about Volatility, a horse you and I both have third, because I'm not sure what the correct answer to this is. This is a horse that obviously got a ridiculous trip last time out. And at this point, basically, Irad realizes I just have nowhere to go with this horse. And I'm just going to let things play out in front of me and kind of hope that I get a little lucky somewhere because he wasn't going anywhere. So the whole race develops in front of him, and he's back in last and makes a significant run at the end to lose by just a length. And this is the race you were talking about that came apart. So going with what you said, which I don't totally disagree with, he was with the flow of the race. But there is an argument. People are going to say, well, what if he had gotten out earlier? He would have won. Okay, that's fair. I bet him in his prior start. He was awful. I mean, Manny gave him a perfect ride. I remember at the top of the stretch thinking, how is it possible this game is so easy? Because he just got this trip, he moved out, and he had absolutely no finish. Now, you want to say he moved a little too soon? I just think he wasn't that good. Did he run a better figure? And even though, yes, he got blocked in the late run, but was that late run really because he was just using that last burst of energy when everybody else was collapsing?
I think that's a really fair question to ask, and that's why I went with a horse that I thought was disadvantaged by the dynamics of that race, because while this horse was running late, this horse was also saving ground up until that point. And I think that it's important when you have horses that have to wait to start their run and don't have the same momentum to give them another opportunity, because that was a good late run from that horse and did have to wait to find that room. On the other hand, I do think the race was falling apart in the later stages, so there was more of a benefit to how that
And you
horse
have
was
his
run.
race 2 back.
Garbage.
To show when he gets a good trip where he didn't run horrendously, but it really wasn't a very good effort in there. And he seems like the kind of horse we would have liked maybe a little bit more too if that was his only turf race, if he hadn't or he didn't have that race before that.
That's a good point.
River Tay ran okay in his first start and met tougher last time. Didn't think he was impossible. You and I both have him fourth, or her fourth, excuse me. Her fourth.
Yeah, she's all around.
So race number 4, I decided to take My Sweet Wife. She scratched, and I did what I hate. And I defaulted into a horse that you'd already picked on top. And the 9 Quick Money, who's the horse to beat, will show the last race at Ellis Park. Lost to Headland, who came here and won for Linda Rice and improved off that win. I want to ask a question about the Linda Rice factor. I think a lot's being made of a suggestion that all her horses are improving. And some have. The horse that ran second last week, she claimed from Tom Amos, improved 15 buyer points off a series of consistent races. But like she won 3 the other day. One was a first-time turfer, and one of them got up in her nose in a race that completely and totally incinerated in the last eighth of a mile. And that horse didn't do any running. It's just everybody else collapsed. And the other one ran a slow figure. And I think overall, she's mostly out of horses in the right spot. She's winning so much. That horse yesterday improved leaps and bounds and blew out a race, but maybe it's an improving horse. And you do have to wonder at a certain point, there will be a regression to the mean. And all of these horses aren't going to keep running for Linda. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And, of course, I think a lot's being made of it. And I think all of us have a right to talk about it. But I'm not sure they aren't horses that are mostly running their races and they're just in the right spots.
And I think a lot of attention is placed on how her barn is doing specifically now because there's a lot of tension on Saratoga in general. So perhaps maybe reading more into it than we did at Belmont. But she was having a lot of success prior to
And she has
this
new
meet as
horses
well.
this meet because the horses she claimed. I don't love this horse. I'll show you a stat for this horse. This is horses claimed from Chris Hartman on the dirt. If you're not familiar with Chris Hartman, he's a trainer that has a lot of success claiming horses and moving them forward. And I worry about this horse being claimed from Chris Hartman, but I had an alternative. And the other thing is, as we show this I'm Buzzy Icy Stare Down race, awesome Indra, I didn't want anybody from this race. I just felt like that was the day for I'm Buzzy. The race totally collapsed. Icy Stare Down's probably the one that ran the best race, but played by Jimmy Ferraro, who has limited success at Saratoga over the years.
And claimed away from Linda Rice.
Right.
So, of course, that's also a factor. Awesome.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say customer experience I thought would run better in a dry track. That's why I have her second.
Yes, I agree with you on that. That I ended up picking her second as well, and I think that also she's moving into the Baker barn, where you have a horse like Icy Stare Down, who's leaving a barn where obviously things are going so well for Linda Rice. I'm Buzzy is a horse that you had a little bit of interest in that day because she's one that was going to get this kind of pace set up, and while
In theory.
that did play out that day, she just barely got there as well.
She needs, I mean, you think about the two big wins she's had, right? They've both been extreme pace scenarios.
And
One
also
was when
very
Cannery
lucky
Love left the gate, or she would have won by 4 lengths in
Yes.
there. But she still ran her big figures, and it just feels like she's so pace dependent. And listen, the pace could be quick in here. We'll see. Not impossible. I also thought Hydra wasn't impossible, and I see you have her a little bit in there as well. I mean, you and I clearly saw this race the same. Because one thing about Hydra is she's been in just sort of
Way over her
ridiculous
head.
spots
And is
since
grade
Rudy
3
claimed her.
placed, like a couple
Yeah.
races ago as well, and taking that kind of class drop in here, they put the blinkers on as well. I think that she's one that you at least have to consider, especially if you're trying to take a shot against some of these favorites and you don't like that race that a lot of them come out of. She has to be considered, but it's not as though there's many other directions to go.
I agree. We'll break after 6, guys, if that's okay. You know, and there have been an inordinate amount of not only favorites winning, but seemingly over bet favorites winning. And these things have a way of evening out over time. And I think, you know, it's interesting. The horse that was in that disqualification yesterday, I do not agree with the disqualification. Many people disagree with me, which is fine. But they took down one of the most overbet horses of the entire meet yesterday. I mean, I don't know who was taking 6 to 5 on that horse, but whatever. Race number 5, excuse me. There's a horse in race number 5 in Colloquy who just has this field over a barrel. I mean, he's so much faster recently, but obviously, and we show his race 2 back when he won, obviously you have to worry a little bit about the distance, but man, has he been facing better horses by a mile.
Oh, he has, and he's going to be forwardly placed in a race where there isn't a ton of early speed going on, except for maybe the 2, Cas Palace, to his inside. He's a horse that's in great form right now as we're taking a look at his last win, and he has a 3rd-place effort following that. You mentioned the distance. I worry about the distance for everybody, not just him.
Right. They all get the distance, just a question of how fast.
I know, it's one of my favorite quotes of yours that you
so
bring up
Wayne
from time
Lucas,
to time.
Yeah. Dr. Marbouze.
I don't worry about the distance as much for him, and I think that's the main thing, but I worry about the fact that he has absolutely no early speed whatsoever. When he was running those races on the NYRA circuit, when you go back to this winter, against a world of better horses like Ouster, Overstep, horses that would be insanely short prices in a spot like this, and he just wasn't able to be competitive with them to be able to run those kind of races that I think he could, with the distance being the great equalizer in here.
Yeah.
I don't... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't worry about the bad race last time out as much because he hasn't run well off of a bit of a freshening pretty much ever. He does seem to need those races to get himself into fitness, and I just thought
It
that
was bad, though. It was
bad. But all of his races off a bit of a break have been kind of bad.
That bad?
Pretty bad.
Okay.
Buyers in the 40s, that's
Okay.
just not him. So I didn't look as much into it as I would for somebody else.
Okay. Listen, I worry a little that the good races in New York were on sloppy sealed tracks. That bothers me, but listen, I mean, I think it's not a bad race to try to come up and be creative. Without being too harsh, this is a very unusual lineup of jockeys to see in a race in Saratoga.
I would agree.
I don't think for $1 million, what's the whole thing about a million monkeys with typewriters could eventually type all the works of Shakespeare? I'm not sure the million jockeys would come up with this group for a race, or the million monkeys would come up with the jockey list for this race. And Jackson Height has Joel Rosario. And Joel Rosario kind of towers over this group of riders. And, he came back in a tough spot in the Mike Lee. Those are pretty good horses, and this is his win last year, his sort of inexplicable win in the Bertram Bongard. But he's run figures that aren't that bad. He's now second off a layoff. And honestly, he has no speed like your horse. I don't worry about that as much because if this becomes a battle of getting the distance, I think the horses coming from behind, your horse, my horse, both won't be particularly compromised by the scenario. And I ultimately decided I think Colloquy's way the horse to beat in here and stuff. And I was even talking to Tom Morley about it. I texted him the other day, so you found some spot for Colloquy. And he said, yeah, I just hope that he's as efficient getting the mile and eighth. And I can't blame him for thinking that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So I thought this was the one that I wanted. I just think it may be a real advantage to have a Joel Rosario in this race.
I think that's completely fair. He does have those good races to go back to. We looked at one of them and facing some pretty decent horses back in the past. I worry about the distance for him too, but I agree with what you're saying about him being one of those ones that's coming later, and perhaps these other horses just can't get this kind of stamina test.
I didn't think Beta was impossible in here either. His form we ran in 2021 at the New York tracks, and he actually ran figures in the 60s, so his form didn't leap up forward a great deal when he went to Finger Lakes. Race number 6. This is a funny race because there's a lot of horses that can win this race on paper.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll start out with Swore, who I have on top, who made up a lot of ground. I thought he was in an extremely tough field. It was dominant. I know it was a fast-looking pace, but it was dominated more forward, and he took another big step forward after his prior effort, which was a real step forward. It seems like Graham Motion's horses are running up here. He won a race yesterday, a logical horse. That horse I liked at a big price, dramatically outran his odds, just not surprisingly wasn't quite good enough behind Linda's runaway winner. I know he's supermoto. I don't think he's going to be much price in here, but I just thought he was the horse to beat.
Just seems like the type that really does want to run all day. Took another step building off of that race that he had run at Delaware, where he just really had a serious trip in that race too back in his first turf try. And I think that he will appreciate getting a little bit more ground to work with. That was also a race that was pretty dominated towards the front end, and he was making up some ground in the later stages, so he makes a lot of sense. I ended up picking him second. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I just think there's a lot going on in this race, and you might want to look for a little bit more of a price.
Talk about your horse, who I have second, so I imagine you and I both saw the same thing.
Is he really going to be this price? 12 to 1, morning line?
Yeah, he should be.
You think so?
I don't know. He goes. He didn't do any particular running in his debut. He's
I
against
mean,
the
just
top.
on connections.
They bet the Bill Lawrence horses.
Chad Brown.
Well, he's also got one in here that's going to be significantly shorter.
That's a fair point.
And, I mean, the 1, 2, and 3 are all going to take serious play. Apparently, a lot of people think the 10 is as well. And my friend Nick Tamro was making a strong case for him, a horse that I wasn't a huge fan of, but he made a big case for him. And I have the greatest respect for Nick's opinion. David obviously agrees. The horse is a short price. Where's he going to go? It's a 10-horse field. I mean,
okay.
it's hard.
That's a fair point.
And I mean, you and I are betting him because he has a big pedigree to move forward going long on the turf.
Of course.
Talk about it.
Half to Sadler's Joy. He's also half to Wolfie's Dynagos, the lesser-known
Many horses,
sibling
but
of
many
two.
horses
Hail
from
2.
that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on within this pedigree, and he should really take another step forward, not only getting some more ground.
Should or could?
Shouldn't he?
No, he could. I don't know. I bet him second. But I don't know. I think we're both hoping that he's a much better horse going longer, but we're still betting a horse that hasn't run since October. Going the distance. And you know what bothers me about this horse?
Tell me.
That he sold for $275,000 with that pedigree. That's what bothered me a little about him. Now, listen, the connections that bred him, they brought in with Bill. So obviously they got back involved with the horse. Now, I don't know if he was an RN. I don't know what the story is. I can always ask him. But it just bothered me that he didn't sell that well because that's a pretty strong family line.
This happens from time to time, and I think with more of the prevalent use of x-rays and other methods of assessing these horses prior to the kinds of sales that we see, like horses like Arcangelo, confidence game that have more of these pedigrees, and you're wondering why didn't they sell for more. I think that's kind of why. It's just a guess. I don't know that that's true.
Well,
but
those
it can
horses
happen.
must have. I mean, I'm guessing that those horses went in the ring and didn't have a particularly great look for a lot of reasons. And listen, I mean, this is something, and I think it's relevant for today's card because it's something that that Jimmy Chapman, who trains Drew's Gold, we bought for $25,000, has won $300,000, and one of the best 3-year-old sprinters in the country. He buys horses with pedigrees like that. I don't know how he missed Arcangelo. He must be kicking himself because that's his perfect kind of horse. Have pedigrees for whatever reasons, and the reality is that many of them, as many horses people pay a lot of money for, turn out not to be runners.
Sure.
But occasionally the pedigree is what shines through at the end, which it's obviously done with Arcangelo.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, I think this horse is a very interesting horse in here. And the other thing is he comes out of a race where he broke slow. Now, he was close to the rail, which was the place to be. But, I mean, Batflip came back with a nice win in a stake race, and Calyx obviously pretty good. So that was a good field.
Yeah, absolutely. And just you talk about this a lot, that natural progression from 2 to 3, how horses can really grow, develop, and improve. So I think there's a lot to like about him. This is a good field.
Gelding, Lasix, blinkers on. Do those ever win? Do they ever win when they throw the kitchen sink at these
I don't
horses?
know, but they're talked about enough, aren't they?
It's just, well, it's funny because we probably should look up some sort of stat like the triple whammy.
If that was all there was, I wouldn't be interested.
Let's talk
say that.
about a horse that you and I have left out that's going to take a lot of money in here, in Smart Uncle. I thought he ran okay first time out. This is his effort. They scratched him out of a race here. I think he was entered like 6 days after this race. Does that sound right?
It was pretty
very
shortly,
close, right?
Yeah, it was pretty shortly thereafter.
And then they shipped him to California to run in a stake race where he was awful. I mean, he was shuffled a little bit early, but
He was really keen in that race, too, really fighting the rider and just not comfortable throughout the running of that race. And also in over his head, just from the one start as a maiden into stakes races, I don't get the move, but
shipping him to California for that.
right.
Jonathan,
What was the expectation?
I think that Nick was telling me, Tamara, that Jonathan Thomas like 1 for 35 in turf routes at Saratoga over the last 5 years with a minuscule ROI. He was the one that we, well, for right or wrong, we may end up being wrong, have left out. You've left out Sacred Rhyme. He did lose to Program Trading. I know he was badly outrun by that one, but he's going to be one of the favorites in the Saratoga Derby, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he makes some sense. I was looking for a little bit more interest in terms of prices, but I will not be shocked whatsoever if this horse ends up winning.
What's your case with Athros and Too Fast? Too Far East is West.
Well, Too Far East is West is one that you mentioned Nick having some interest in, who is going to be towards the outside, and he's had a couple of starts so far where he's at least hit the board and shown that he has some ability. So you're not betting him with all the potential in the world more so than you are with some of the other horses in here. You've seen that he does have the ability to do some running so far.
I'm worried he's 3 for 3 with seconds, even money last time, and now he's in a deeper field with a lousy post.
That's a fair point. I feel as though he had a little bit of traffic trouble and had to wait for some room
Fair.
last time and could improve off of that, but you don't like to see the seconds building up. And then the other Grand Motion horse is one that also does have a little bit of pedigree too. The turf course at Delaware last time out was rated soft, fast, perhaps appreciates getting a little bit further and back on some firm ground.
Okay, those races aren't terrible. I love that Too Far East is West beat a horse named Zevon, who our friend Greg Wolf, you know who Warren Zevon is now, don't you? It's a story of me breaking Greg's phone years ago because
Really?
he didn't know who Warren Zevon was.
You know, I broke my phone the other day.
Really?
I did.
Wow.
It's fixed now.
Is it a tragedy?
I was. It's very
Tragic
upsetting.
moments, yeah. Greg's phone was sort of already broken,
Oh, okay.
which is one of those things.
As long as you didn't ruin it
I
completely.
mean, if you don't know lawyers, guns, and money, that's a wrap on the first 6. The late pick 5 after a quick break.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
We are back, Sarah and Andy, for the late pick 5 in this card, and I thought this is a really fun race coming up here. Wow, you have the 7 fourth. Okay, I find that a little hard to take, but I think City Mist is way the horse to beat. We'll show the last race where he ran fine. It was a merry-go-round affair. They went 1, 2, 3, around 4 around the racetrack, and the race where he actually ran extremely well was that December 5th, 2021 race. And I remember when I was handicapping this race on Monday, thinking, I think I tweeted something about it. I think I tweeted a bit about this horse, saying that, like, thank God I didn't see this horse in this race because this was a real trip horse you were waiting for off that December
sure.
race. And I thought he ran well, but I would have gotten beat. But he lost to horses that are better than these. He ran better. Why are you so against this horse?
I don't love the horses that are coming from Gulfstream in these 5 furlong type of sprints and then coming up here after a bit of a break. We haven't seen him since last December. And he also is one that, wouldn't they have kept him really sprinting on the turf? I know that they've tried a couple of races. He ends up getting rained off and has just been kind of unlucky. But then the move to go over
He
to
got
the
rained
synthetic.
off. He went to synthetic. I mean,
I don't know. I'm not in love.
okay, this horse that has good New York form. Mark Hassey's horse in the last race, coming off a similar layoff in yesterday's last race, ran a huge race to
He
just
did run
get
well.
nailed at the wire. So we'll see. I'm going to try to beat him, but I think that he is a very dangerous player. We have the replay of last year around Labor Day, I think a Sunday, of Courageous Ola.
Did you know that I was going to pick this horse?
I did not know you were
I
going to
was
pick this. I'm
surprised
not
that
a
you sent
mind
this one
reader.
in.
Well, I read on the internet that you wait for my picks
I
to copy
know.
them. If you've
So-
been doing that, you're not doing very well. It's also the most, it's just another lie on Twitter by some preposterous
Well, I figured
jealous
that we
person.
must have talked about this beforehand for you to send in the replay. But anyway, this horse has some
She's
speed.
not copying my picks.
This horse has some speed. He ran pretty well this day. If we can get back to this kind of effort, I think this one is a contender. And really, since
Agreed.
then, the turf race subsequent to this, a much tougher field, and then there's other dirt races before that. So I just thought that this one would be forward from the rail, take advantage of that kind of position, and still be a price in here.
I do think that he's potentially dangerous in here, and I looked at him quite a bit, and one of the reasons I showed the replay. But I think honor among men and Burn Jakey Burn with Luis Saez, I'm going to be surprised if he's able to control in this race. And I also think this is just a better race than he was in. But I understand the merits of him, and I'm not. Listen, I think the 2 Dr. Settle's Dream, a horse I tried in successfully 3 back, ran well enough last time, and I'll probably prefer 5.5, is certainly a player in this race. There are 2 horses in this race that you have to look at, and I have them second and third. You have them second and fourth in a different flip-flopped. That actually you don't. I'm sorry. You don't, the 6 who I have on top. You have the 11 in there. Both of these horses are interesting horses if you think the race can fall apart a little bit, and I do like closers in there. My problem with Noble Huntsman, who I almost put on top, I decided to separate them with the 7 and put them both in there, is I don't know how Jose got as lost with him last time as he did. I worry that running in that last race has dulled his speed to the point where he could get completely lost in this race. And I know he wanted 5.5 last year, but that was a long time ago, and he's a different horse than that. Having said that, there's no way I wouldn't use him, and if he's 10-1, I could have a little on him as well. It's sort of a question of price, but he's a very dangerous horse that's been
And
compromised.
Right. I do think he gets the kind of pace to close into, and he does get that cut back in distance, too. All the points that you mentioned about what there is to like about him, does he end up getting some kind of position from all the way in the outside?
That's what worry. Well, I don't worry about that. I just worry about him dropping back. I don't
Way
worry
too
about
far
losing
back.
a little ground. I worry
Okay.
about it. I'm not, it's
Well,
a
he has
problem for my
some
horse,
stamina,
too.
Sure, but
He also had a big trip 2 back. Source ran extremely well against the racetrack with 4th in that Conman rain. That was a super effort, and that's why I liked him and King of Comedy. King of Comedy obliged. This horse just was out the back door in a paceless race.
right.
That worries me. Now, Creasa, who's riding Creasa? Do we know?
I think it's Manny Franco.
Okay,
I could
Manny.
be wrong. Manny's
Excellent.
very capable.
Manny's my man.
Yep.
Creasa got lost last time. I know he has no speed. He isn't that slow. And he got absolutely, completely, and totally lost in there and was doing a lot of running when he got going late in there. And I'm not worried about the 5.5. I decided to take him because he got lost. He'll probably be a slightly better price. David has them both the same price. I want one of those 2 closers with the 7, with a
Yeah,
logical.
fair enough.
Right. All right. And Disarmed, obviously. People are going to talk about how horses have won the Disarmed race, but the horses that won were all compromised by the trip that Disarmed got, right?
Exactly.
So, anybody else?
And the price just keeps dropping on him, too. The time to get in on him has already passed.
He's coming off a win. You know they're going to get bet. It's a
Right.
fun race. That was
Yeah.
a really, really good race.
Today's whole card is extremely competitive, I felt.
Could
yeah.
not agree more with you. Race number 8 changed a bit with the scratches. My second, third fourth, third.
I like both of them too.
Yeah, they both seem logical. I mean, we've both got the number 9 horse, Prove Right, will show his win at Laurel. He's just been running against so much better, Sarah.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, this is a horse that's dropping out of graded stakes company, and he hasn't been completely disgraced in those races where he has been facing much better, too. I was going to try to take a small shot against with 2 of the other interesting horses in here that don't end up playing today. I scratch into him, but he makes so much sense in here. He's going to be drawn outside in that advantageous position as having outside speed. There's just so much to like about him with what I thought could be his main competition coming out.
And for those people that might look at him and say, well, he's dropping in for 50 and he's stake-faced. Jimmy Chapman bought him for 15,000. Another perfect example. A Justify he got for 15,000 that's made 230,000. So if somebody claims for 50, which they may well, even if he runs second in this race, he walks away with over $60,000. The horse ends up, $300,000 of earnings and sale price, paid $15,000 for. It's kept for a year and a half. So Jimmy's done pretty well with this horse. I think it's a very logical spot. He's not winning those stakes, and it's not like he's run so badly at times in them. And Dangerous Ride seems to be the other horse in here. I just wish he had more consistent form, Sarah.
I don't know what to do with him or what version of him we're really going to get today, because obviously his bigger races make him very competitive, and he's another one that has faced very good company as well.
Let's look at his January 29th win at Gulfstream. He has, but he's also faced some lousier company and not done
no
very
running.
well, right?
Right, and they've tried a couple different things with him. They've gone to try the turf. They tried the synthetic. They've gone a little bit further, a little bit shorter. I think that speaks to them not really knowing what he wants to do fully and what his best case scenario is in terms of conditions. So I think that confusion that we feel is probably also felt by the connections.
Yeah, that's very fair. That's a very good way to put it. I struggle with him because I thought about putting him on top, and I just kept looking back at him, and I agree completely. I think he could very well win this race, but he's got too many races I can't really defend. I mean, obviously, he wasn't being the federal judge field, but like
or the Fountain of Youth, but
yeah,
still.
but, it's hard to look at his PPs because there's spots you just want to completely throw out. But then there's races where you go,
You should have done more, yes.
Listen, I think Sound Doctrine is dangerous. Jose D'Angelo had the win yesterday, and, I mean, he was way over his head last time out and ran a good enough race 2 back that I don't think he's impossible in here. I mean, we flip-flopped him second and third.
Yeah, I picked him second.
I don't think that either one of these horses are being the 9 if the 9 shows up with a semblance of his better races.
Yes.
But I think if he doesn't, either one of them could win. Is that fair?
Right. Well, if the 9 doesn't run his best race, this becomes a lot more of an open affair because you have a little bit more inconsistency and you have some horses that could take another step forward.
Yeah, I didn't think Robbie Falcone's horse, Roy Richard, was impossible in here. He's been running reasonably well. And last time out, that race was very much dominated towards the front, even though the track was fair.
Yep.
Race number 9. I had the 9th race. I thought there were 4 contenders. You have picked one of them. The horse you picked, I did not like in here, but always happy to see Mike Trombetta do well. I thought it was the 1, 3, 8, and 10 in here, and didn't have a super strong opinion. Settled on the 3 because he's probably going to be the best price of them.
Yeah. I wasn't in love with Fredo. What did you see about him?
Well, we have a replay for him, so let's talk about Ski Patrol first, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Because isn't he going to be the favorite with IRAD?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that Declan Cannon moved too soon with him last time out, and he was wide around the track, 3 and 4 wide. But it makes me wonder, right? He ran these big, consistent figures at Gulfstream, and you talk about it, and I talk about it, those Gulfstream turf races, and then he goes here, and moving too soon, he still shouldn't drop 15 buyer points or 14 points, right?
Right. This is a horse that we saw those more competitive races at Gulfstream Park, and then once he moves over to Horseshoe Indianapolis, this is a horse that regressed pretty significantly from an 87 to a 73, and he was such a short price that day, ends up not being able to get the win, finishes 3rd in there. He's been a short price the last couple of times.
Going to be a short price this time.
He's going to be a short price again, and the horse that he beat 3 back, My Sea Cottage, who did finally get the win the other day, is not necessarily a winning type that I use to be like, oh, this is a horse that was facing such good horses that love to win.
Yeah, and these are races that Craig Wilkowski has a little bit lower than Beyer does for some of them. We'll see. Listen, he can win. I've got him second. You've got him third. Talk about the horse you like, who I did not like, but go ahead.
I mean, the last race at Pimlico, he was fresh off a layoff. He had been running at Gulfstream throughout the winter, stopped in December, kind of trying a couple different things, and did take a while to break his maiden. But he was one that was able to drop for the $40,000 tag, get it on the synthetic, and then I thought that his race the next time out after that, he just was inside. That's not necessarily where you want to be on the synthetic. And I just felt as though he's one that could move forward second off the layoff and was running in a fairly decent spot at Pimlico.
Okay. He's never won on the turf.
Yeah, we don't love that.
We don't love it. You
I don't love
you
it.
you don't not love it less than I do.
That's
Is that
a
right?
very
Did I get all
confusing
those
way to
negatives?
say
Right?
what you're
I don't-
trying to say,
No idea.
but I agree
I'm
with you.
50-50, right? So either it's a triple negative or a quadruple negative. Harry Hood, scared he can wire the field?
Yes, I mean, and of course you have to be scared of any horse that's really lightly raced in a spot like this for Chad Brown. So he's another
He's
one
had some
that
trips too, this horse.
He has.
It's interesting they drop him in for a tag. Off a maiden win, first time for the tag. Chad Brown's 0 for 1. He was fourth at 5-2. It's not particularly sample. I want to say that Harry Hood is that a Fish song? Is Harry Hood somehow related to Fish?
You're
You know
asking
that
the wrong
Bob
person,
Edwards,
but I do know what Fish is.
E5. Fish are playing 2 benefit shows for the
Really?
for the flooding in Vermont on Travers Friday and Saturday nights.
Pretty cool.
Saratoga will be rocking. I'll ask you, Bob Edwards. I know where you'll be. Fredo.
Tell me about
Not
him.
just because I'm a fan of The Godfather. Fredo, we're going to show at Gulfstream 3 back with the third place finish, where I actually thought he ran pretty well. And I think those races are sort of comparable to the 10, who's going to be a much shorter price. And this horse got an absolutely ridiculous trip on June 9th last time. First of all, 6 may be a bit short, but also that was a big inside track, and he was just out in the middle of the racetrack, 3-4 wide the whole way around the track, and he's dirtied up by that race. And I just thought he's got races that are fast enough. He's supposed to be forward. Maybe Harry Hood clears him. If not, he's going to be in front for Lescano, and I just thought he was good enough to win the race and would be a better price.
I think he was also facing better horses last time out, too. It's something
yeah.
that is not necessarily what he wants to do. I just don't love that race in between. I know it was the Mr. Steele, but I don't think that much of Max KO, I will say.
Why? Well, I mean, Saratoga Flash beat him. Saratoga Flash would be about even money in this race, to be fair. We'll see. I thought he was reasonable. I thought he would be forward in here, and I don't love the others, but I think there are numerous. I thought there were 4, and you like somebody else. The Amsterdam. For those that don't know, Amsterdam, New York is a little west of here. You probably have never been to the Village Pizzeria, which is in Galway on the way to Amsterdam.
We had a Village Pizza in the town I grew up in, but I'm sure it's not the same one.
Village
so.
Pizzeria is a great, great spot.
Yeah.
Truly great spot. I had a birthday party actually there last year,
Ooh.
and also have an amazing wine cellar.
Really?
Yes, legendary. So
Good to
let's look at Drew's Gold and Gilmore running second and third. And you know what I'm really looking forward to about these 2 horses is I want to see if horses can run back to that huge figure, because it seemed a little bit on the high side to some of us. It got a 109, and Arabian Lion could be the Breeders' Cup Sprint winner off an effort like that, or the Breeders' Cup Mile winner. I thought they both ran well. I'm a little worried that Drew's Gold is under the gun from the inside in a race that has some speed.
I think that's a completely fair concern to have. This is a horse that was previously undefeated going into this race, and I thought for this level of competition for him to go into, he ran extremely well, stalking the pace from the outside.
He's
and pushed
terrific.
up well. He's extremely talented. He's also one that's improved pretty much through each start
Yeah.
so far, and
Yeah.
even if you believe that the number assigned to this race
So it's
last
101.
time was too
102,
high,
right.
he can still drop about 10 points and be competitive.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. What about Gilmore? Isn't he a logical horse to pick up pieces if you think the pace is hot?
He is.
You like him less than me.
I didn't think the pace was going to be quite as hot as maybe others do, and I do feel as though perhaps that 104 showed up a little bit for him in a way that I think that he's more of that picking up the pieces type than a type that is more of a winner. And I also think that he ran very well in the race before that in the Pat Day Mile, ending up third that day with a 93 buyer behind General Jim and Fort Bragg.
I thought he ran much better last time because he was in closer attendance to the pace.
I do too. And I wonder if perhaps this 7 furlong type of distance, or now it's going to be even shorter than that today, maybe suits him, and this might be a little bit too sharp for him to end
Really?
up getting into his stride.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree on that, but certainly they're valid points.
Are you surprised
Rivet.
to see New York Thunder running?
Why?
He's scratched twice since the last race that he won.
Oh, no. But I didn't know he was scratched twice. But why did he scratch?
He scratched out of the Woody Stevens, and then he scratched out of a race that was on a wet track at Ellis Park. So I wonder.
It's not wet.
Sorry, sloppy, sealed.
But no, it's not wet here, I'm saying.
Right, I know, but I wonder if there was something going on, or perhaps they were trying to find a spot that wasn't on and off track, or with him drawing the rail.
Okay. I don't know. He's never been on the dirt. There isn't a lot of pedigree to really pick apart in there. There are dirt horses in there, and he's obviously talented. I like Rivet. This is his best, most sternest test, no doubt. But Mulligan's pretty good. I thought he was impressive last time. And to me, this strikes me as your typical top horse for Steve Asmussen. They just keep getting better and better and better. And I also like the fact that he actually won a race at Oaklawn with a fast figure rating. So it's not as though he needs the lead. Now, he's potentially the speed of the speed, but I think you can be confident that he doesn't necessarily need the race to be, speed. Now, that was a fast-paced race, which obviously helped him here, but he is multidimensional. And it just feels to me like with Steve, he's such a reliable trainer with these types. You can not only count on them to run back to their races, you can reasonably expect them to often improve, especially the good ones.
It's very rare that he has those horses that have a throw-out kind of race, or one that you really do just have to draw a line through. So I completely agree with what you're saying on that. This is one who also is building on a serious win streak right now, and while he is stepping up, I think, to face maybe the toughest company he's ever faced as one of his main rivals in that Pimlico race 2 back, didn't end up finishing the race that day, but I feel as though he's one that would have to take a little bit more of a step forward if you do have horses like Drew's Gold and even Gilmore run back to a number similar to what they got in the Woody Stevens.
I'm not sure. Timeform has his races better. I'm not sure. I'm on the fence on that one. It's fair, but I'm on the fence. Deer District. Deer District, off his last race, is a horse that clearly can rate and can run fast. My problem with Deer District, and Dale Roman's numbers off wins at dirt sprints, he's 9 for 40, 23%, 340 ROI. There is a $39 horse in there, but he'd still be a positive ROI without that horse. And listen, on the surface of things, this was a giant effort by him.
It was, and he's one that's going to be coming from off the pace. If you do see a scenario where things do heat up early, he's also drawn a little bit more to the outside of Drew's Gold. So Drew's Gold has some decisions to make from the rail, and this was a tremendous effort by him. You see him pulling away in the later stages, and Martin Garcia is here, and this is the only horse he's riding today.
Well, I'm not surprised he didn't pick up a lot of other mounts, but I also am not surprised he wants to stick with this horse. Maybe I'll have my first Dale Roman sighting of the meet.
You haven't seen him yet?
I
Even
have
I've
not.
seen him.
Well, you probably walk by the cigar bar that he's always on Broadway,
That's where
right?
they hang out, yeah.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm well aware. I'm boycotting Dale until he brings his daughter Bailey to town, who's one of my all-time favorite people on earth. But I do think this horse is definitely a player in here. It's a really fun race. I know
It
it's fun.
is.
Joey Freshwater's entered tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Race number 11. My objection in race number 11, because I always like to air my objections early, is that somebody named a horse after Timo. And I know our friend Richard Migliori remembers Timo well because he was briefly a bit of a rival to the mighty Artie Schiller. Billy Badgett trained him. He actually beat him when Artie got unlucky in the Pilgrim, I think. And he somehow was favored over him in the Woodlawn on Preakness Day. And Artie won by like 8 lengths and paid like $780. It was one of the great gifts of all time.
Wasn't that Richie's dog's name, too?
What, Timo?
Yeah.
Well, then it would be because of the horse, I would think.
Horse.
I'm not sure. That doesn't make sense. Should have named it Artie.
This is not the same Timo, let's just say that.
No. Another Jonathan Thomas horse tried. He's got a lot of horses live today and route races on the turf. So what happens to that 1 for 35 stat? A lot of horses relying on it. Fast Boat to Sky will show his 5th place finish first time on the turf. And he's a logical horse. I'll let you talk about him.
This is one that I just thought would be forward and really appreciate some class relief, as he's a horse that was facing Northern Invader, that really impressive Cherie DeVoe horse in that race last time out, where he just really was not going to be competitive with that kind of horse. And this is one that I think will just get that class relief, get that forward position, and also gets a rider change from an apprentice to Trevor McCarthy. I think that could also work in his favor as well. I know he's had his chances, but not as many going a little bit longer on the grass. And with those things, plus the inside post position, I thought today could finally be his day.
He's very logical. Who's riding him today?
Trevor McCarthy.
Trevor is? All right, you just said that. Okay. That's fair. I've got him 3rd. I think he's horse to beat in this race. I have no argument with that.
Yeah.
I wonder about the mile and 16th. I think it's getting a little bit long for him.
Yeah.
By the way, Northern Invader is running in the Hall of Fame on Friday
Oh,
for Cherie,
really?
so looking
Okay.
forward to that. It's a West
He's very good.
Point horse as well. Feels like West Point's been kind of quiet. I don't think they've run that many horses to meet. I've
Yeah.
only seen Tommy Bellhouse once.
I think that's fair.
That's just not right.
I do run into Tommy on occasion, though. He's very nice.
Tommy's a Tommy's a legend. If you don't love Tommy Bellhouse, you don't know Tommy Bellhouse. I thought there were two interesting horses I want to use in here. One of them is Urgent Fury, who ran against real horses in his debut. Private Creed was an Asmussen horse that improved significantly, and I think you go through that race, and there are plenty of horses that move forward out of that race, not surprisingly. It's like, what is he doing here? I mean, he's a very odd horse to show up here. They shipped him for this race from Ellis Park to run him here. Are there really no maiden claimers on the turf to find for Ellis Park for him? It really seems sort of interesting. They get Joel to ride him, and he ran well enough as a 2-year-old with routine improvement. He's right in the ballpark here, and 2 is going to be forward enough at least in this race, and I just found him to be sort of a fascinating horse here. You didn't find him particularly interesting?
He's also stretching out for the first time, but why are we giving up
to do it.
on him so quickly? That's kind of what I want to know.
That's fair. I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
But why are you giving up and shipping him all the way here to do it?
Sure. Maybe they just want to get the win at Saratoga. They found a spot like this. They think that it makes some sense. And sure.
I think the really interesting horse as well is Lastly.
Big
This horse has a
pedigree.
giant pedigree. A half
Big
to
pedigree.
5 major turf winners. Dam, a multiple winner in the grass. In fact, this horse won first time out up here, a half to this horse, and got disqualified at like 25 to 1. I bet the horse. I remember. It was legitimate DQ.
Yeah.
The horse fouled a horse to win the race, and it wasn't. And I think, but good play second. The exact was very good. But I can remember it actually fairly well. It's one of those DQs you can't really sweat. It was actually a full to this horse. You can't really sweat because the horse wouldn't have won if he didn't foul the horse. I think Manny rode him that day. I think this horse is super interesting. And it's not like he didn't show any talent in the dirt. At least he
some
showed speed.
Exactly.
So
and rained off. So there were turf intentions. Yeah. I hear you.
I don't want variable costs. They're going to bet him because of Linda. Sure, he's okay, but I don't know. He's just going to take money, and it just seems like he's kind of blah. He's going to win the race if nobody shows up, right?
Well, sure, but I think a horse like Pioneering Spirit is one of those horses that you don't want to keep taking, but he keeps running well, and I think there was at least a little bit of, a taking up at the break last time out for him. I try not to get in the way of Linda anymore, and these aren't horses that I want to put on top. These aren't horses that I want to bet to win, but they continue to run well and win, so I couldn't completely leave this one off.
There are 2 Todd Pletchers. I've left them completely out. You have the 6 second. Nostalgic One is the other one. Talk about them.
I mean, this is a horse that is routing on the turf for the first time, but I thought that his second place finish going 2 back on the synthetic wasn't too bad, dropping in class for the first time. I liked this one more than the other class dropping Todd Pletcher. There are a lot of horses dropping in for a tag for the first time in here, though.
Yeah, I didn't think the other one did any running in his
No.
races. Zyrad will take money. I mean, they're far from impossible in here. I was going to kind of use the logical fast Boat to Sky and the 2 fuzzies in there, Urgent Fury and Lastly.
Fun race to end it.
I agree. No, it's a terrific card today.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. We will do it again tomorrow, a 12-race card tomorrow for Saturday. You need to head over to Naira Bets if you're not a member at Naira Bets. No better time than the present. Use the promo code SPA200, and we will match the $200 of your initial deposit. We also have, what do we have? Middle pick 4. Race 5 today. Middle pick 5, one of 3, and race number 4. We have the contest, $300 buy-in. You have until 5 o'clock. Now you only have a little less than 4.5 hours to sign up. Head over to NYRA.com/contest. A lot of fun to play. Cash and seat prizes. A live money contest as well. The Taste New York Pavilion, a lot of fun. Head on over to that. It's near Gate A, the famous Berkshire Bank Family Zone. And I think that's it. 1 to 7, FS2, all the action today. Sarah, thank you so much.
Of course.
Terrific job as always. We're done.
We're done.
You are just getting started. Frank Miramati, who is killing it up here, is up next with a reprise of the Scratches and Changes. Have a great day.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.